that was? Wow.
Yeah, dude. So this is like the funniest thing in the world. So you know how like Bill Pugh, he's a big guy, right? A lot of muscles, big chest,
Yeah,
a lot of push-ups, right? Kind of like Steve, you know, he's like this old dude, like friggin' amazing physicality. Dude likes BTS, so he's a K-pop guy, and you know, hopefully he won't kill me for outing him out for liking K-pop. But apparently he likes all these girl bands and stuff like that, which I was like,
hey man,
really?
Whatever. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, whatever floats your boat, dude. Yeah.
Right.
And so, did you guys know he played bass?
I did not know that.
No.
See, nobody knows, right? Yeah, it's pretty. And
I'm surprised. I mean,
we're learning all these new things about Bill.
You guys are. I'm surprised he never said anything.
Yeah. He's probably like Stanley Clark level ridiculous, and he's just watching us going, "Oh my God, these guys have no soul."
Stanley Clark.
No rhythm.
They have no groove. They don't have the funk. But yeah, it's crazy. So he loves. There's a member of the group BTS, Jungkook, who came out with his own solo album. It's a song called Seven, which is really nasty. And of course, Bill would pick the nastiest song on the album, right? But that's his favorite song. So I was hoping that actually he said he was going to play it. Maybe next week. I don't know. But it's a tribute to Bill. And this shocking revelation that this guy is like a friggin', you know, K-pop
maestro
fanboy. Yeah.
No, BTS. Well, you know, different strokes for different folks. That's
Bass playing for BTS, you know?
Yeah. Well, we talked about how we have a lot of cultural, you know, Koreans and African Americans have a lot of common attributes, like this penchant for barbecue. You know, Korean barbecue.
That's true. Yeah, that's interesting.
And
well, you know, it's always good to open your mind to new things. And so maybe I'll listen to some more K-pop. If Bill's got a little playlist, he can share a Spotify playlist for IoT Coffee Talk listeners. He can share it, and then we can get on the bandwagon. You know, get on the bandwagon.
Yeah. When I think of bass players, I think of people all dressed up. You know, like Gene Simmons from Kiss. You know, that's what I think of. You know,
Bootsy Collins.
Or Geddy Lee's a good bass player, you know. Wow. Yeah. And if I'm in and out, I'm like doing the 5G iPad thing, and I'm driving by Mount Shasta. So who knows?
Yeah.
What's going to happen with connectivity?
What part of the country are you in there, Rob?
I'm in Northern California, so I'm heading north on the 5 towards Mount Shasta. I just drove by Shasta Lake.
Right on.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Heading back to the cold.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So, hey everyone, welcome to IoT Coffee Talk. Remember to take us seriously at your own risk. We're just here to have fun. And we will attest that it would be quite dangerous for you to take us seriously. So don't do it. Just don't do it, especially these days where the level of stupidity is literally off the charts. And we want to afford ourselves every latitude to say, basically match the level of ridiculousness that is out there today. Because we can't help it. I mean, what else? Things are ridiculous. It's not because we want to be ridiculous. We just got to go.
Not our fault. It's ridiculous.
Right? Yeah. And so remember, we do this all for the kids. So we have a charity called Elevate Our Kids. Just go to www.elevateourkids.org. We're trying to help bridge the digital divide for kids, K through 12, and underserved and unserved communities. Yes, there are still things like this in this world, despite all the tariffs and all this other stuff, geopolitical nonsense that's going on. There are people that are in need. And so we're about helping them out. And hopefully that doesn't go out of style and fashion, right? I mean, it seems like, you know, it is, which is a little bit sad. But anyways, please consider donating. We're on a constant, perpetual, kind of like a software license. That's a perpetual license. We're on a perpetual fundraising drive here. So please, of course, if you're not into charity,
we would love to have someday when we don't have to do this.
Awesome. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We would love to shift our perpetual license to a subscription.
Subscription based.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Go to a SaaS model.
We're gonna SaaS it.
With Stephanie, they sit there going, listen, we just want to do a subscription model for donations.
Exactly.
Hey, look, St. Jude can do it. Why can't we?
Actually, what we need to do is we need to fundraise so we can buy Steve a friggin' mic. Dude, what do you...
Yeah, we're gonna do a fundraiser for Steve. Yeah.
Sell some of your Bitcoin and upgrade your mic, man. Jeez. Anyways, you have to thank AI, because if it wasn't for AI and a lot of digital signal processing, we wouldn't be able to hear you at all, Steve. So I don't want to ever hear you make fun of a digital signal processor on the show ever again.
I need to hook you up, Steve, with my XLR setup here.
No.
No, it's not. It's not better.
No. But anywho, if you're not into charity but you're into fashion, Pete is modeling a beautiful, hoodie, IoT Coffee Talk hoodie. We also have red. Yes, and we have equally as beautiful Elevator Kids hoodies and paraphernalia of all sorts. So yeah, go check out the site and then consider good for your entire family, your church, or whatever, your synagogue, or whatever. And anyways, let's get started. Hey, what's up, guys? What's new other than
let's get it started.
Tariffs.
Tariffs. Well, yeah. It's interesting. I saw. Oh no, we lost Steve. I guess he took our microphone comment personally.
I'm here. I got to take it.
There he is.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Someone was talking about the impact of tariffs. It was a topic for us too. It's like, we're very dependent, our funding for the AGI Foundation on tech companies, and people are going through a process right now to understand what's their supply chain look like and how's it going to really impact the business. And so I think everyone's kind of have, if you don't already have that process in place, which you should have had since COVID, it's kind of a good time to think about your supply chain and how to make it more resilient to these kinds of buffeting winds. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah.
Too early to tell.
Apple flew, I heard, 6 cargo planes of iPhones from India.
Yep.
In anticipation of the tariff that didn't happen. So I'm sure that cost is going to get passed down at some point,
Yeah.
I think I have a little experience in the phone business, and if you have to ship phones on planes, that's not a good sign. That's kind of like the most expensive way to ship phones. So they were in panic mode. But we'll see. I don't know if you've seen all the Gen AI videos floating out there of like what the future looks like for the US, where they have all these US workers like building iPhones. And have you seen those?
No.
Yeah.
Very funny.
That's not going to happen.
Are they funny or?
It's like they're in like these, like a sweatshop, and they're like stitching together Nike sneakers, and all that stuff. And they all have their MAGA hats on,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
It's pretty crazy, yeah. But, that's Gen AI to the rescue. So now we got that working for us, which is good.
Yeah. Well, I'm certain, regardless, tariff or not, uncertainty is very expensive. So that is, it's still going to cause inflated prices because companies have to spend a lot to prepare for this.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be very expensive, period.
Yeah, pretty much. I think just the biggest question for everyone, I think, is really, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? Because it doesn't look like it's working.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's
well, what we're trying to achieve is a concentration of wealth to the wealthiest. Is that's what's being attempted, and that's and the ultra wealthy who are concentrating wealth now don't really care if their iPhone costs more money. So that's kind of what's happening right now. So.
Yeah, I mean, but I think the problem is rooted in this notion that didn't get dispelled running up to these tariffs, is that we pay for, like the consumer pays for the tariff in some form ultimately, and that the affecting of their demand, right, and their ability to afford things and what they can afford with their disposable income goes down. This is like basic friggin' economics, right? And it's all the reasons why you don't. If you're going to institute tariffs, it should be tactical. It shouldn't be unstrategic.
Blanket, yeah. Well, a good example I heard was, I bought a cup of coffee from my local coffee house for $3, and so I have a trade deficit of $3 with them. So I slapped a 50% tariff on them in retaliation of the trade deficit. So now my coffee I bought from them costs $4.50. So there you go.
Yeah, but then you're paying yourself.
Yeah.
Or someone else in your family.
I showed them. Now I pay $4.50 for my coffee instead of $3. So.
No, but I think that's where, because if you go and you look at the comment section of a lot of these news articles, and we can't avoid them. That's the thing. Is these things are being pushed upon us. You see some of the commentary, and there is just the most ignorant stuff that you've ever seen in your life. And I think that's the problem. All this ignorance continues to support and fuel something that just doesn't look like it's meeting its objectives. But we'll see. Right. I mean, I'm leaning more toward history and basic economics. It doesn't even have to be advanced economics. This is basic economics. I'll place my bets on that.
This is Econ 101, right? 101.
Yeah, but somebody, one of the late night guys did a jaywalk type of thing based on this thing, right? They asked him, do you support the current tariff policy? And they said, yeah, totally, yeah, awesome. And so they asked them basic questions like, who's the president? Who's the first president of the United States? And they kept saying Abraham Lincoln, and or some other, other more recent president. But and then they did simple math, and they couldn't do simple math, and it was just like, oh my gosh.
Well, it's education is. Empowerment through knowledge. That's what we always say. It's like, getting people educated is kind of the baseline for any society. And unfortunately, as we know, it's in short supply in many cases. So,
but here's the challenge is and this is the issue with a lot of these LLMs that are being used as a basis of truth, right? Which they never should be. Is that the reference or the standard for what is true or factual is going to be based on statistical consensus amongst what has been published out there. So if you have all these LLMs or these GPT, Chat GPT type chatbots that are scraping the internet, including the comment section of some of these news sites, man, are we in trouble? You know what I'm saying? And so,
yeah, anyway. There was a reporter. I can't remember her. The company. I can't remember the news agency, but she posts stuff on LinkedIn and she writes or things interesting, and I can't remember. It was probably an article about Tariff, and I was reading the comments, and there was all this, USA, tariffs are great, blah blah blah, and I was looking at the commenters, and I noticed that none of them were in my network, and it was just weird. The cadence of what they were saying sounded very similar, having this super rah-rah crazy kind of. And so I started looking at the comments, and they were all like, Earl's Lawn Care from Idaho, but they only had like 2 followers.
Yeah. Bots.
On LinkedIn. I'm like, these are all bots. These are all bots.
All bots.
And I told her, I sent her a letter, I sent her a message. I was like, hey, you realize that the commenters who are against your post are all bots? I'm like, that's like a story in and of itself. Like, those comments away, it's more diverse, nuanced group of people making comments as opposed to just kind of spitting out like talking points, basically.
It's called fake.
That's what's happening.
It's fake fame. It's fake influence, fake fame. We talked about this, right, Debbie? There are people out there who are buying. I mean, they're buying that engagement.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They literally are. And then they turn around and they sell it to a customer, and they say, hey, look at all this influence I have, but it's all fabricated and all bot driven. And, I
mean, if someone has it, like, these people have like 2 followers, 0 followers, they've never posted anything ever. I'm like, I don't have to have a super algorithm to know this is a fake person.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, we deal with a lot of issues, but, last week we talked about how the tariffs are impacting the world of IoT, especially in the U.S. And Steve, you brought up some really great points, but I was thinking, why don't we try to be constructive and positive here? And Rob, you and I have been talking about the sort of the IoT Renaissance, right? Right.
Yes.
Like, so what the hell does that look like? What do we think that looks like in the midst of all of this turmoil and stuff? I mean, because before all this was happening, I think you and I were kind of hopeful, right? We were going, oh, you know what, something might be happening here, and I think the rest of you guys may also agree that IoT might be poised for some substantial resurgence. But what do you guys think?
We need to make IoT devices in America. That's what we need to do. That's how you get the freaking Renaissance.
Yeah.
Where do you get the chips from?
We're going to make them.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
We're going to make them in Texas.
8 years from now, that's great. That's not like a today thing. So.
Well, Intel needs customers.
Yeah, Intel's got 18A is right around the corner.
Yeah, well, we don't even need 18A for that. They have a bunch of old fabs and old equipment, old process technology.
Don't need 18A.
Yeah. I mean, that's why
we'll use 386 chips.
Huh?
We'll use 386 chips for all our embedded devices.
Get
those things fired back up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we got fabrication for chips in California. We've got several of them in Austin that actually go way back in time even. Obviously Samsung could do manufacturing in Austin to get stuff out the door. It'll be interesting to see how Samsung, you've seen a lot of people posting the diff between pricing between Apple and Samsung moving forward based on, different tariffs, right? Oh, and, I really got to turn this around so you guys can see Mount Shasta. Can y'all see that?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Cool.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's sort of, yeah. It's a bit pixelated, but you can see.
Yeah. Connectivity's not great out here.
But I mean, Apple can't even make their phone without Samsung chips.
That's right.
Exactly.
So Samsung, obviously they do their own manufacturing in Korea. They do manufacturing in Vietnam for a lot of devices. But they've got facilities in Austin.
But how much do they import? I mean, it's a circular conversation, right? I mean, if you're going to say that you're going to manufacture and it's got to be made, then your substrates and everything else needs to be U.S. born, and we're not equipped for that.
Yeah, that's the issue that we had years back when there was the early discussion around the CHIPS Act and how to bring, Intel and Pat Gelsinger were talking about how do we bring semiconductor manufacturing back on shore, right? Or back into the US. They generalized everything so much where you had Biden go up on stage and say, hey, look, our automotive supply chain is automotive manufacturing is at a standstill. These factories have to shut down because this chip that's 50 cents, right? And then under the same breath, they're talking about semiconductor technology and manufacturing leadership, and all of that is leading edge stuff, which at the time Intel didn't have, and arguably still doesn't have. And that's why we brought and subsidized TSMC and Samsung, right? And I think a lot of people are forgetting this who don't track the semiconductor industry. But
where does Broadcom do most of its stuff?
Broadcom? What do you mean?
Like a lot of the chips that we use in devices are manufactured by Broadcom.
TSMC.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Taiwan. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think a lot of it tends to be more leading edge. They have a lot of trailing edge stuff, but then in terms of like boards and all the devices that they make, a lot of it is packaged and assembled in Southeast Asia and China. So, and that stuff is like super commodity, and they're really good at that stuff in Asia, right? And the economics work out. The thing is here, it's expensive. I mean, there's a reason why they do it, right? There was an economic reason why. So that, but for IoT, how many? I mean, I guess the hope would have to be, and I think Qualcomm's kind of doing this, is to take these IoT architectures, up the chain toward more premium, and then maybe using distributed architectures to centralize distributed architectures to more centrally have a lot of the AI compute or processing analytics done more centrally and more adaptably across. But then that's like a huge lift and shift in and of itself, right? That's a brownfield. You're going up against a brownfield. So that's not going to happen overnight either. So.
But also the tariff, situation affects the hardware much more than the software, right? So in that sense, like the software part of this of business, which is, I guess I'm a little biased, I would say the most important part, isn't really affected by tariffs, right? So now it's really talking about device cost and device cost is going to go up with all this complexity, and unless the winners will be those that have those really flexible supply chains where they can source from India or source from Vietnam or source from wherever, and they've built this resiliency into their supply chains, and they'll have a competitive advantage. And so, like I'm sure every device builder these days has some sort of kind of geopolitical tariff strategy team that's kind of working these issues, right? But the software part's not affected, and so. So this may not be the big hindrance that people think it is. I think for IoT and for edge devices where the cost of the CapEx cost is less, I think when you get into higher priced, manufacturing equipment like, KUKA robots and $1 million things, then that's a different issue. But at that point, that's kind of an enterprise expense with depreciation and tax breaks and yada, yada, yada. I think where the tariff stuff really hits people most is not necessarily an enterprise IoT, but it's more consumer goods. I think it's more consumer goods, frankly. I think it's the end cap at the Home Depot, all that shit's going to be 50% more. So,
yeah.
As long as we can keep the market manipulation away, then yeah.
No, that's already happening, Bill. Sorry.
Yeah.
Also,
got to bake that in.
I mean, I agree that probably most of the hit will be hardware, but because there are so many like tariff going around. There are also some export controls that are being put on software and algorithms and stuff like that. So
yeah,
that's true.
That is an impact, definitely.
Yeah, it's more complicated.
But we don't know how much
to ship your stuff, right? Because you're not sure whether you can ship where anymore. Especially from a security and encryption perspective. Yeah,
I've seen people talking about export controls lately on software, and I don't know if they're talking about something different or new, because we've always had export controls on software and crypto and algorithms and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if they're talking about new different ones.
Yeah, we're talking about new different ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of it related to the AI open source, well, open and closed. You know, the actually access to models, weights, data sets, et cetera. I mean, those are like sort of net new things. And you know, before Biden left office, he instituted that executive order, right, to restrict the access. AI. Yeah. But then it got like a bunch of things really confused and weird. So, my audio is going in and out. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. What are these H2O chips from NVIDIA that I'm reading about in the last 2 days that might be okay for China? Assuming you could hear me.
Check one.
Yes.
No, we can hear you. Totally.
Okay.
Better?
Yep.
I don't know why the volume was like set really low. Great. Yeah. The H20, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, whatever that is. I've been reading about those, so like those might be okay, good to go for China.
Yeah, it sounds like Jensen had a dinner at Mar-a-Lago, and then made a deal that allowed that to happen. So I guess everyone.
You got to do.
I wonder how much crypto coin he had to buy to get that deal closed. Trump coin.
I don't know. Maybe not.
Sometimes you got to go do negotiations at the White House in Florida. You know?
Yeah.
Well, you got to do what you got to do, right? It's business is business. Whoever you got to talk to, whoever you got to deal with. There's Shasta from the side view.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. No, but you're right. But there's different styles of doing that, and you have to just adapt to the particular one that is the style of the Trump administration. So it is what it is, sort of.
Yep.
Right? We're better or worse, right?
It is. You just got, hey, this is the game, and this is how I got to play the game. And yeah, I'm going to be in Mar-a-Lago. And if I need to, I'm sure a lot of tech CEOs and others have lots of dinners lined up with Trump and his team.
Yeah.
As long as they have their chastity belts off. I'm sorry. I can't help it.
Want to make sure the show doesn't get super political.
Yeah,
not at all.
We gotta restrain ourselves. Yeah, it's so tough though when it just all becomes about business, right? But yeah, you're right, Rob. We just gotta be as neutral. But again, going back to what is it that we can do to provide insight to our audience about how to navigate this stuff? Because most folks aren't going to be able to go and have dinner with the president to negotiate or plead their case in the lights of the tariffs, but their businesses are going to be impacted. But I don't know, Steve, any ideas from last week that you could build upon on last week? You see anything that some of the folks that you're interfacing with or instituting in terms of adjustments or strategies to mitigate the impacts of the tariffs?
Well, I think you hit it perfectly on the alternatives for products, right? So a lot of people are looking at Canadian-based companies or Eastern European companies where the tariffs were so much lower than Asia. And so you're seeing the Teltonicas of the world and some of the other, like Cradlepoint, coming out of Ericsson instead, where where you're trying to find alternative routers and gateways for your deployments there. The sensors are going to be interesting. So I was talking to a friend of mine from a French sensor-based company, and they're looking at alternative sources as well. So a lot of the onus goes on the distribution. What are they sourcing to compensate for that? And then the other big thing is a continuation of what I did say last Friday, which was I've heard more OpEx related bundling with hardware included discussions this week. And so I do think that people are getting innovative to add the bundling price, and that may go up some percentage to cover it, but that reduces your CapEx on products that are affected by the tariff significantly.
Yeah. Well,
but I do think that Pete, you're 100% right. I think the consumer aspect of this is going to be dramatic. I think that you're going to walk into Best Buy, you're going to walk into the Apple Store, you're not going to be buying.
Your Ring doorbell is going to be
correct. The Google, the Amazon store, all that is going to be affected dramatically. But again, over some period of time when the supply shelves drop because the boats aren't delivering more supplies, right? So
I think there's also a little bit of a psychological impact. Like I said, people are not sure exactly what's going on. So I think people are going to pull back spending a little bit, or sort of like, well, can I push out that big investment maybe a little bit until it's a little more stable and clear what's going on? And that may never happen, by the way, at least for the foreseeable future. So I would not be surprised to see a little bit of a pullback in general on commercial investment in tech.
But I mean, we've all six of us have lived through some down times in our industry. And even in the worst of times, whether it was the 2008-9 recession issues or COVID issues, IoT survived and did very, very well, because the fundamentals of why you deploy IoT, whether it be in a commercial setting, an enterprise setting, is still there. The fundamentals are you will do better, you will do more with less, you will have more efficiencies and things like that. So your sales approach changes now, just like it did for us in the past events that we've had to live through.
Well, I mean, the successful sales are in this space are all about efficiency and optimization and
productivity gains
and productivity, and that and especially in a market where there's less money flowing around is a stronger value prop. So that's why I think edge computing and IoT will continue to flourish as long as the value prop is around that efficiency. And people just need to build more resiliency into their plans. When there's less stability, you just need more resiliency, and that's just
exactly. And if you got that's where the systems integrators, the ISPs, the SPs that are involved in selling to customers have got to. And I had a whole conversation yesterday with a company about it. A company came to us reaching out for help. You cannot sell the same way you did 2 weeks ago, or 2 months ago. You are talking to people that are a little shaky and a little nervous. And so you've got to learn how to sell into that environment to make it a win-win and still cost effective for everybody in the supply chain. So I still think that that's going to be an issue. And I'm going to go back to the Renaissance, right? The IoT Renaissance. Are we going back to where we sold value? Again, as a software value and the things that are there, where's the Renaissance begin again?
But I mean, I think it has to begin there. I really do. I agree. Because I remember working for a company and saying, look, we should give the hardware away and just make them. It's how you position it and how you package it. Right. Give the hardware away. You make the money on the software and services.
That's exactly right. The ARR.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, that's the camera as a service, or people sell in a security solution the equipment comes with, and it's just part of the thing. Now the issue though is that as the cost of that equipment goes up, right, it does impact your ability to then your kind of monthly fees have to go up, and or your margin goes down. I mean, so there is something there, but I agree. I think for most of these solutions the equipment is kind of included.
Yep.
That's right, but I think it's going to affect like the Yolinks of the world, right? Who've been selling these bundled Amazon solutions where you get 3 cameras, 3 water leak sensors, and it's on your Wi-Fi network, and it's
well, now you'll get two sensors.
Correct. Well, that's right.
Same price.
But it's going to be an interesting. There's some interesting facts coming out to see if those kinds of companies like the Yolinks, where their profit is over the next quarter, right? Because
maybe we'll see some shrinkflation in the tech world, like we see in the potato chip world, right?
Right.
So instead of the smaller bag of chips for the same price or less chips, you'll have like 2 cameras instead of 3.
Right. But again, another conversation I had with a very large commercial consumer company in the IoT space was, maybe the general public will understand that all of our Amazon products, all of our Dollar Tree, dollar store products, all of our IoT cheap-ass products will increase in price. Where are you willing to still buy this stuff at?
Sure. No, it's definitely going to stretch the curve a little bit. People have to find their spot, but we'll see. You just kind of prepare to spend more for your Ring doorbells or whatever else those things are, and maybe that will impact the market. I mean, the consumer spending is the vast majority of the economy in the U.S.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know that, and we'll see where it comes out. I mean, buying new cars. I actually met with a startup yesterday that's doing some cool retrofitting. I won't spill the beans on them, but they do retrofitting for existing cars to add a lot of interesting smarts to them. And
I'd like to know more about
sort
that.
of like, hey, instead of buying a new Tesla for $100,000, you can take this thing and it will add a lot of smarts to your car, to your existing vehicle. And it was like, oh, that's an interesting idea, because it's like
is that a CAN bus interface? What is that? How do they do it?
CAN bus, yeah. But
cool.
So it's like people are looking at like this: how do I add more to my existing infrastructure and more AI and capabilities, rather than rip and replace? The greenfield stuff is kind of a pipe dream for most people. So brownfield's kind of where it's at. And, being savvy about architecting your products for that kind of resiliency and deployment is really important, I think.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Pete, I'd like to know more about it if you can share.
I'll see if I can. I'll bring you into the loop.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
He's gonna read you in.
I'll read you in.
As we say. Yeah.
Only if I'm worthy, Rob. Only if I'm worthy.
Oh,
that's right. Make sure you've got your TS SCI clearance.
True.
And then we'll read you in on this deal. Absolutely.
Right. In this,
like we said, as far as business advice, we said a little bit of this last week when we talked about, a bump in sales of Mercedes and BMWs, a run on the stores, right, to buy before the tariffs take effect.
Yeah.
And so
too late.
I don't know if it's too late. Yeah. Because, when we talk about broad mega scale IoT, which is just millions of microcontrollers and little sensors, if all of those become double in price, right, then it's easy for us to talk a good game about bundling it in with the software. But that's real money. And so, and yes, we certainly have COVID as something to look back on as far as supply chain disruption. I do remember, I don't think I'm giving away a secret, but I remember the early days of Blues Wireless. They pre-bought a ton of microcontrollers.
And chips. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And they had them all in a warehouse in advance prior to the supply chain going haywire during COVID. And that really helped them big time.
Yeah.
But hindsight, right? I don't know if everybody else has got warehouse full of stuff or not. Who knows? That's already in distribution or it's already in America. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there are people stockpiling a lot of stuff at the moment, buying advanced components as well as finished electronics. So we'll see. There'll be that bump, and then we'll then see the supply chain then hit that.
There's another player that we don't talk about very often, and they're also in Texas. It's Texas Instruments.
Yeah.
They're actually one of the first semiconductor manufacturers in America, going way back, and they can up their game. In fact, we need to call them out and say, "Hey, up your game in Dallas and Houston at your fab plants." Who do you think manufactured all the Spark processors for Sun Microsystems? It was TI. Who made so much of what was going into cell phones back in the day? All the DAC stuff, so anyway, there's a possibility. We just have to be resourceful and poke around and find out who can do this stuff, right?
Well, it reminds me a bit of steel. So I know a lot of people, they want us to, do more domestic steel production, but over the last 50 years, our capacity has decreased so much. So our steel capacity is 10% of what it was in the 70s. So even if we did everything 100%, we still be, in a trick bag, so to speak. So I think that's a similar thing, maybe not to the same extent with these other manufacturers, where even if they went 100%, it doesn't cover. You still have to import something, right? And so, even if you wanted your production to be increased, that takes years. So it's not months and days; it's many years of work to do that.
Right. It's kind of like a similar. It's like a redux of the trailing edge manufacturing problem that we had during COVID. Right. We assumed that we had all this trailing edge capacity, but we didn't necessarily. I mean, Global Foundries is another one that I think will benefit from a lot of this. But I mean, no, definitely there are options, and I think it's really good that we do have some of this trailing edge capacity now with Intel coming. Hopefully, let's keep our fingers crossed with 18A, some leading edge chops and capacity as they ramp up. Those are good things, right? The problem, though, is they're getting killed in China, whereas everyone else is getting exemptions because they're sourcing out of Taiwan, right? And so it's weird. These tariffs have this way of just undermining Intel every single friggin' step of the way ever since 2019. It's just tragic, quite honestly. And so they've gotten beat up because consider this. The CHIPS Act was really about how do we get Intel back on its feet? And then it wasn't even about TSMC and Samsung, because those guys, they were considered leading edge at the time. They still are. And it was about how do we invest in our domestic chip manufacturers so that they can compete with TSMC. That was really what it was about, and everything anchored on Intel. And look at where Intel is now with their Intel, Intel Foundry, IF.
A lot of this is also about national security.
But it doesn't look like we're doing a great job of achieving those national security goals. That's the problem. But you know what I mean. Yeah, I know.
All these ideas, all these tools, all these things were about being more self-sufficient and not dependent on a little island that could get invaded any day now by mainland China. That was the main reason. Because you're right, we need chips all over the place, and so the home team is Intel, right? And so, I mean, I get the thinking behind all of this. It's just that
you brought up Global Foundries, though, Leonard. I mean, the amount of factory building and stuff that they've expanded in upstate New York. I mean, those are the kind of companies we need to know more about and what their capabilities are to be able to produce.
Because like most of the IoT stuff is trailing edge stuff. You're not building, you're not designing chips using, N3 or friggin' N2 and at like what friggin', tens of thousands of dollars per wafer. That's not IoT, right? You're using old ass equipment, which by the way gets more expensive as it doesn't get produced anymore. So that was these are all the weird nuances that people didn't factor in when they're building these strategies. Even back, during the time that, where we're looking at trying to get the CHIPS Act signed, and we still have those disconnects, right? And people generalizing chips and not understanding, okay, for IoT, this is what matters. And then for all the high-end stuff like an iPhone, which by the way, shrinking that Apple's market is not a good thing in the US, because that actually enables Huawei, right? Huawei loves it. And so there are all these unintended consequences that haven't been factored in. And, a lot of people hate on Apple, but if it wasn't for Apple, there would be no N2, right? And even the AI hyperscale, these mega data center guys that are building all these AI supercomputers, they're not the first to go to N2, right? The economics are much better actually on trailing edge stuff for these large systems, because they're scaling using networking and interconnect and other things, and memory storage, other things than the chip. It's the smartphone that still drives leading edge, and Apple is number one. And you make them number two, number three. Guess what? There is no customer for absolute leading edge.
I don't see that happening in our lifetime. I mean, I mean, first of all, Huawei is different comment, but I don't.
Come on.
I don't.
Huawei is supposed to be gone. They're supposed to be dead. They're not. Far from it.
They're stronger than ever.
Well, they are here.
They don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
Ask anyone there if they give a flying shit that they're here. They say no.
Yeah.
Wasn't there news this past week about some new fab capabilities coming out of China that were kind of rivaling ASML now for EUV and things like that?
Yeah, using a different technique. Yeah, I saw that. So
I mean, inevitably, that stuff's going to catch up. I mean, you could. This is maybe a controversial statement, but going back and saying, when the U.S. sort of cut off China from AI and said we're not going to and semiconductor manufacturing, and we then drove them to develop a lot of their own capabilities rather than maintaining a reliance on the U.S., which is what they had. And so now we're in a situation where China is going to be self-reliant on semiconductor fab as well as AI chip design and everything else, which kind of backfired, arguably.
Yeah.
So, on a Renaissance note, on Wednesday we had IoT Day.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you had lots of big events happening all over the world. If you were following all the IoT Day stuff, or I know Rob Van Kranenburg, who started all that stuff, and he tried to repost as many of them. Lots of cool get-togethers, coffees, meetings, presentations happened all over the world in different cities on IoT Day. And so when we were thinking about the IoT Renaissance, I know Rob and I were really encouraged. We haven't seen so many different groups participate in IoT Day like this in forever.
Yeah.
And so when you feel like, oh, wow, there's a surge here and everybody's frozen, which means I must be frozen. Hopefully you can hear me.
I think
we can hear you.
Okay.
I don't feel frozen, but
Yeah, I know you don't.
Maybe that's.
I just know that when all of you guys become frozen to me, that means I'm frozen to you. So, yeah, a lot of great stuff. Listened in on great things, lots of meetings, lots of lunches, and so that was good. It was a good vibe. And so, gosh, I spent a bunch of time. I put kind of based on the book I'm writing about the saving the earth with AI and the Internet of Things. I did like an hour and 20-minute presentation on using that technology to go after the Sustainable Development Goals. Boy, that took a while to make and get that video going or whatever. But that was a lot of fun, and it's a different view of IoT, right? It's a different look. It's trying to make a difference in the world. So good stuff. Hopefully, I'll get this book done soon. You never know.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No. So what did you see as a key glimmer of hope, and coming out of all this IoT Day stuff, sharing and anything like pop out for you other than photos of everyone having lunch and dinners and stuff like that?
Absolutely. I listened in on stuff. Sometimes, I know you're looking for a specific new thing. Part of it was old stuff, I think. Part of it was just a vibe. Part of it was, hey, people are talking about it again. People are excited about it again. And I know human energy doesn't necessarily replace reality on the ground for business like that. It just felt hopeful. Lots of and saying.
Okay. You're hitting the divide.
Did you lose me?
Yeah.
A little choppy.
Okay. A little choppy. A choppy 5G, right?
Yeah.
You could turn your video off. That might help keep the audio.
That's true.
We'll just ask for a larger slice.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes. I'm just going to push.
You need a virtual network slice.
Purple button. Yeah.
Well, actually, that's the real thing, as you know. It is. You're going to be able to call network API and maybe pass along $5 from your account, and they're going to give you a slice, or they're going to give you better bandwidth.
Every time you make a call, they'll say, "Do you want this call to actually be stable? Please click here for an extra $5."
No kidding.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay,
give me extra 15 Trump coins, and you get the nod. Network on demand.
There you go.
An option, yeah. PayPal or to your bill or just Trump coin.
Exactly.
Nice.
Anywho. Everything is for sale, my friends.
You know what? I think we have tariff fatigue. I think that's the problem.
Maybe.
We have
feels like someone's peed in our cornflakes a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just exhausted. Yeah.
It's been a long week.
I'm going to Mexico on Saturday, so I'm off the grid next week, so I don't really care.
Oh, really? Oh.
Hopefully they'll let me back in. I don't know.
I was about to say, are you coming back?
Who knows?
Better watch it.
I might open up the AJI Foundation, Cancun office.
Well, they're really they have to strip down. I mean, there's even with the border control, it's taking me forever to get my global entry renewal done. But I did finally get a notice. So it's 6 months after I paid them. And so now they want me to go to a foreign country and then come back in and then do my interview then. So.
Oh, jeez. What the hell's that all about?
Apparently, innovation is called make things feasible with a bit of inconvenience and delay. So.
Oh, that sucks. Sorry to hear that.
No. Well,
You're right there. You're right there. Just run across Tijuana and come back.
If I want to do the interview in July, I want to do the interviews. So yeah, that's one of the downsides of smaller government, I suppose. But back
in Bill's wheel, and I was just sitting there thinking of Bill's wheelhouse with digital twins.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I did it was a non-classified briefing of the senior military officers. So I do that thing I do like 3 times a year.
Oh, yeah.
And so did that yesterday. And there was, when I do my talk, just it's data, it's AI, it's IoT, it's digital twins, the kind of stuff I weave together. But a lot of questions about digital twins, a lot of more interest, and a lot of interest and a lot of questions asking me about interoperability. When they're built, they're actually finally, different control systems, different systems on battleships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, things like that. And I actually had questions about vendor A of this fire control system, digital twin, interoperating with vendor B, building a different part of the ship.
Wow.
Combat systems. And a lot of questions about, hey, Rob, what's the deal about interoperability? Can you help us with that? And I'm like, oh, man, you're going to hate me. They're like, can you tell me about the standards for digital twins and the standards for all interoperability?
There are no standards.
I'm like, there are no standards. Exactly. And so their big problem is they're like, because there is no standards and everybody's doing their own thing, it requires more work. What's everybody having to do? They're building adapters. They're having to adapt this way of doing digital twin A to digital twin B. And I was like, gosh, this is taking me back to Hitachi days. I had to fly to Waldorf to spend time with SAP when they were doing this stuff to build to interoperability between Hitachi and SAP digital twins. It's crazy, but it's a thing.
We have to do that. I mean, we have a library of adapters, plugins. I mean, whether it be a Kafka plugin, whether it be a Confluent plugin, whether it be, we've got plugins on top of plugins.
Plugins for your plugins.
That's great business. Plugin business. Middleware.
Hey, no, that's what you literally call plug and play.
Well, yeah.
Hey guys, I apologize, but I need to drop for a minute.
Yeah, so do I. I just saw my meeting pop up.
Weekend,
okay.
everyone.
All right. Well, hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the next IoT Coffee Talk.
Next Curve. Be a subscriber to Next Curve as well.
IoT. Crap, I got that wrong. Remember to subscribe, like, and all that good stuff. IoTCoffeeTalk.com. Yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're on Buzzsprout as well. Rob is hosting that. So yeah, tune in every week. If you made it this far, wow, you're a champion. And remember, we're in an IoT Renaissance, and we're going to try to figure out how to keep it that way, despite all.
We are the Renaissance people of IoT.
Yeah, so continue to tune in. Eventually, we'll have an answer to all this stuff. But once again, thank you, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.